If I could have your attention for a moment, please. In a minute, we'll be bringing in a beautiful sculpture that has been designed by survivors of institutions. Here comes the sculpture. So we're having a grand drum roll entrance. This is a sculpture that's been designed by survivors of institutions because they wanted their own way to honor those who died and were buried at Huronia Regional Center Cemetery. The government put up a lot of plaques without the involvement of survivors and with some inaccuracies. And so survivors, it was very important to survivors to have their own way of honoring those they knew who didn't survive. So this is a beautiful sculpture, the model of the actual monument, which will be 10 or 11 feet high. Unfortunately, the government has not given permission to put the monument in the cemetery for which it was designed, which is such a slap in the face to survivors. So we don't know why the delay, but it means that it can't be unveiled at the Mother's Day memorial that happens every year. So we have little slips of paper we're going to pass through the audience. If we can go row by row, pass it to the row behind you when it comes to the end of a row. We're asking the government to give that consent, of all things. So we'll be collecting the signatures in this bag at the end of the play. Thank you very much.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. Did everyone enjoy dinner? Okay, thank you. Good evening. My name is Yvonne Spicer. I am the council appointee to the Board of Directors with Community Living Ontario. I'd like to welcome you all to the Miles Nady Jewish Community Center, Al Green Theatre. My name is Yvonne, and I am the council appointed director of Communitaro's Board of Directors. Before we begin, we'd like to acknowledge the diversity of peoples of the first people of this area. The Miles Nady Jewish Community Center is in the Dish with One Spoon territory. A treaty between the Anishinaabeg, Mississaugas, Haudenosaunee, that bound them to share the territory and to protect the land. We are grateful to have the opportunity to live, work, and meet on this territory. We honor these people as stewards of this land, builders of communities, and shapers and keepers of culture. Nearly 10 years ago, Huronia, Rideau, and Southwestern Ontario Regional Centers, the last large government-run institutions for people labeled with an intellectual disability, was closed forever. We know that creating and maintaining such institutions was one of the most harmful things we have done as a society. Despite the doors of the institutions being closed for nearly a decade, institutionalization remains. People continue to struggle. Harmful and controlling approaches still occur, and people are sometimes required to give up their rights and liberties. Not all people are respected and welcome citizens. Organizations within the disability community, including institutional survivors, People First Ontario, and Council of Community Living Ontario, have organized Flying to Freedom, the journey from institutionalization in Ontario, to commemorate the closures, examine how we change attitudes and prevent people from being institutionalized, and commit ourselves to creating a fully inclusive society. We would like to show our support for the survivors and the audience If you are comfortable in being recognized, please stand as you are able to raise your hand if you prefer. Also, share your thoughts and photos from tonight on social media. Please use the hashtag #FlyingToFreedom and never again on your posts. We also want to thank Community Living Toronto and their volunteers for their help with today's event, including photography and videography. They will be recording people's stories about institutionalization. If you want your story told, please let one of the volunteers know and they will direct you to the right person. Now please join me in welcoming Betty Ann Bond, who will be providing remarks on behalf of survivors.
I guess it's good evening now. Yeah, no, that's good. I think so. I think so as well. Okay. Welcome, everyone, to the Flying to Freedom Journey from Institutionalization Ontario Conference. It is so warming to see such a large turnout of people that want to be with us here today and this evening to share with us our experiences of life in an institution that predominantly was all we knew. We now have voices and freedom to talk about those days. Please listen and believe our stories as they are true. We hope today's presentation to you will both inform and move you all in helping to make sure that these terrible actions and cast them into the past and that this will never be repeated ever again. But as we know, people are still being institutionalized in Ontario as we speak. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you, Betty. I would like to call on Corey Earl to bring remarks People's First.
Go. Good evening, everyone. Well, it is so great to see such a great turnout tonight. Peer First of Ontario is certainly proud to be a partner here today and also to stand with all the survivors here today. We stand with you. We want to thank all the survivors for your courage, determination, conviction, and perseverance. It is because of you that the large institutions closed here. Peer First will always have your back and advocate for continuously for the closure of institutions. In fact, we are calling on the government of Ontario to stand with all of us, to denounce any institutions, small and large, to open again or open at all. We want to be treated as people first. We deserve to have the same choices to live in a community just like anyone else. Peer First is a proud partner in standing up for all voices labeled with intellectual disabilities. Although we're recognizing the 10 years of institution closure in Ontario, we still have a lot of work to do. Recognizing that there continues to be small institutions opening right here in Ontario. And in fact, that there are actually a number of large institutions still operating across this country. If we stand united, We can and we will succeed in closing all institutions. We will not rest or stop talking about it. A home is a community. Having a place to call home, having who you want to live with, having who you want to visit. It is your home. Thank you.
Thank you, Corey. Please welcome James Taylor, President of Council of Communitario.
Thank you, Yvonne. My name is James Taylor, and I am the president of the Council of Community Ontario. Council works with other self-advocates, advocates from across Ontario to identify concerns that affect the lives of people who have intellectual disability. We listen and create plans of actions to bring about positive changes. Council, in partnership with Community Living Ontario's Board of Directors, continues to advocate for inclusion. This means we believe people are valued, trusted members of their communities. How would you feel to be isolated in your community? Would you feel safe? Would you feel empowered? Would you feel included? Would you feel welcome? Would you feel free? Everyone deserves the right to live where they want, to choose their neighbors, and live free with their community. Free from segregation, free from judgment and stigma. Sadly, although institutions have closed, too many people still live in unsafe living conditions. Guy Mitchell and Jamie Hawley were two men who sadly passed away due to unsafe living conditions that were missed due to isolation from their family, friends, and communities. Inclusion does not mean segregation, living, or isolation. This is not what inclusion is all about. Council believes in the world that is welcoming and sees people valued citizens. A world that is filled with love and acceptance. Let's put an end to congregating living and grow an inclusive world that demands the opportunity for everyone to live free. Thank you. Hope you enjoy today's event.
Thank you, James. Created by La Roche, Toronto Soul Express in collaboration with Victoria Freeman, Jumblies, Theatre Birds make me think about freedom reflects on our humanity, inspired by the stories of people institutionalized for being labeled with developmental disabilities and their families and friends. The play goes to dark places by touching on sensitive material regarding institutional mistreatment. However, it doesn't end there, as it delves into thoughts and discussions on freedom, hope, choice, and living on our own. Please join me in welcoming Rafael Arias, Executive Director and Community Leader of La Roche, Toronto.
Good evening. It is my privilege to welcome you to a performance of Birds Make Me Think About Freedom, a multimedia reflection. It's not working. Bring it up a little bit. I will start from the beginning. It's fine. It is my privilege to welcome you to a performance of Birds Make Me Think About Freedom, a multimedia reflection on the stories of persons who were institutionalized and their families and friends. As just mentioned, this extraordinary work was created by Large Toronto's Soul Express with Victoria Freeman, author of A World Without Martha, in collaboration with Jumblies Theatre. Funding through the Investing in Justice Fund and the Canada Council for the Arts Explore and Create grant made this performance possible. Walking with institutional survivors has been central to the life and mission of L'Arche since Jean Vanier first encountered Raphael Semih, Philippe Seu, and other men living in an institution near Paris in 1964. Jean felt called to make his home with some of these men, listening to their pain, learning and growing with them. I have also been on this journey. In my early 20s, I made my home with several men and women who Large Toronto welcomed from Huronia Regional, supporting them through their passage from segregation to belonging and inclusion. For each person, the journey from trauma to trust and healing was different. For some, quite difficult, yet each eventually moved to a place of new life and flourishing. I had the opportunity to visit Huronia and see with my own eyes what I would later see in the documentary The Freedom Tour and hear in the radio program The Gristle in the Stew. I was deeply disturbed by these experiences. As a young man from Germany, I was aware that the Nazi genocide began by segregating groups such as Jewish, Roma, and gay people from society in the name of the public good, and that among the first victims were men, women, and children with disabilities and mental illness living in institutions. How was it possible that this segregation was still happening in Ontario, Canada in the early 2000s? These experiences called me to work as an ally of survivors, walking with them and listening to their stories. That is also what has happened for the creative team and performers of Birds Make Me Think About Freedom. They listened with respect to the stories of survivors, both painful and hopeful, and reflected on what they heard. Some said, "This is sad," or "This could have happened to me." Victoria, Cheryl, and Matt did research and worked with survivor guides to help shape how they could bring such a complex story to the stage in a way that it could be accessible to the audiences. It was hard work, but everyone involved realized that it was important that people know what went on in those places. Birds Make Me Think About Freedom is inspired by the stories of people who were institutionalized, their families and friends. But it is a story for all of us. It calls us to reflect on what it means to be human, on what can happen when we devalue and segregate people because of fear of difference, and on the incredible capacity of individuals to heal and grow in freedom when they discover friendship and valued belonging. Thank you.
There. Okay, sorry.
Sorry about that.
Scripts are available for tonight for people wishing to follow the performance that way. Please raise your hand and an usher will provide you with one. Following the performance, everyone is welcome to a light reception in the Jacobs Lounge. On behalf of the organizing committee, I would like to thank the survivors, the projects involved with today's event, as well as all the people who played a part in Flying to Freedom. Enjoy the performance. Thank you.
Are we ready to begin? Join us if you wish. Breathe in. Breathe out. Breathe in. And breathe out. Breathe in. And breathe out.
The first Ontario institution for people with intellectual disabilities was opened in 1876, followed by 15 others. After decades of activism, the last three institutions, Huronia, Rideau, and Southwestern, were closed in 2009. The following year, Huronia survivors, Marie Slark and Pat Seth, along with their litigation guardians, Marilyn and Jim Dolmage, launched the first class action lawsuit alleging systemic abuse and neglect. Many others followed. David McKillop was the litigant for Rideau, and Vicki Clark, his litigation guardian. Mary Ellen Fox was the litigant, and Rosalind Bechard, the litigation guardian for Southwestern. The settlement of the class actions led to compensation for some survivors and a public apology by then Premier of Ontario, Kathleen Wynne, and opposition leaders.
This is the apology of Kathleen Wynne. I offer an apology to the men, women, and children of Ontario who were failed by a model of institutional care for people with developmental disabilities. We must look in the eyes of those who have been affected and to those they leave behind and say, we are sorry. Over a period of generations and under various governments, too many of these men, women, children, and their families were deeply harmed and continue to bear the scars and the consequences of this time. Their humanity was undermined. They were separated from their families and robbed of their potential, their comfort, their safety, and their dignity. When we first started to hear about the stories of survivors, I thought that could have been me. I wouldn't know what I would have done or say or do. I wouldn't have any power at all. But we do. I am a compassion builder. I want to give myself to these stories and help others to see the light in a way where everyone is safe from all of that.
Here's some bobby pins, and in order to knit on them you have to straighten them out like this. Whoops. They could snap very easily, so you gotta be careful. And here's the other one. And I have some yarn here, so I'm gonna start casting maybe about 20 stitches. this. Here's 2. 3. 4. 5.
Da 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 La da ma da da ya na la da fa ha ha na ha
your little velvet hand in mine, and down a hallway longer than the rest, I led you from your home and gave you no sign. It was all for the best. Now all your needs are filled, or so they say. Kind, unknown hands that change every day will guide you in your everlasting play. The tower walls inside. You will not miss the varied, lovely sense of freedom. Of fish-laden winds that blow off the sea air, of stained books or rained-on pavement. They say you will not know. You will not know how I remember eyes as blue as the hyacinth from the market square, and listening still for your morning dove cries in the silent night air, and searching for something heavy I can hold sometimes, to fill my empty arms again. My sister had disappeared. I could not comprehend her absence, or why my parents were so accepting of it.
Leo asked, how long am I going to live here? He was told, oh, you'll be living here forever.
This big window, this big window I see in front of me. The clock keeps ticking, and I don't know what time it is. It keeps ticking, and I don't know what time it is. It keeps ticking, 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 ticking. 5 miles of corridors linking 50 buildings, a mile of underground tunnels, a working farm, free labor, 432 tons, vegetables, produce annually, 9,000 bags of potatoes, 10,000 early cabbages, 3,500 tomato plants, 4.5 million pounds of laundry, 20,000 pounds of laundry, 27,000 sheets, and 50,000 diapers.
to stand in a corner with their hands up like this, or be made to dig worms on your stomach with your hands behind your back, straight out, flat on your stomach with your nose into the floor. You couldn't turn your head this way or that way. To stand in a corner with their hands up like this, or be made to dig worms on your stomach with your hands behind your back, straight out, flat on your stomach with your nose into the floor. You couldn't turn your head this way or that way. To stand in a corner with their hands up like this, or be made to dig worms on your stomach with your hands
When I
behind
lived
your
in
back,
the
straight
institution in Aurelia,
out, flat on your
and
stomach.
some people
with
were
your
knitting,
nose into the
I learned
Ah, poor bird, take thy flight, take thy flight, far above the sorrow of this dark night. Take thy flight, far above the sorrow of this dark sorrow of this dark night. Take thy flight, far above the sorrow of this dark night. Ah, poor bird, take thy flight, far above the sorrow. Far above the sorrow.
You have no idea.
Far above the sorrow.
If walls could talk.
Of this dark night, a poor bird, a poor bird, far above the sorrow, a poor bird, far above the sorrow.
when I lived in the institution in Aurelia, and some people were knitting, I learned to knit on bobby pins when I was 9 years old. And we would straighten them out and use them as knitting needles. And things came out a lot smaller, you know. And I would make dog clothes without a pattern. Yeah, I didn't have a pattern to do it. And then when I was 12 years old, I learned how to sew and do crocheting. And then I was a lot older when I learned to do some beading work. said in my file that I was being destructive when I would rip things, when actually what I was doing was I was trying to make things, you know. I just like working with my hands. And I've made a few things. And that's about all I have to say.
There's this one teacher who used to like me for who I am.
Someone listen to me.
Somebody cared for me.
My sister Gretchen was very depressed every day. Withdrawn, just lying in bed. Dying really. My mother asked me if an older girl could help care for her. Helen Blue was 17 years old. First Nations from Manitoulin Island. Helen spent as much time as she could with Gretchen at Gretchen's Holy Rallies. Helen saved Gretchen's life. I'm gonna make it.
I'm a strong woman. I am.
With all the things going on in the institution, we were not old enough to understand what friends mean. We just hung out together. And being in a large room of 30 men and doors were always locked all the time, and there was fighting going on all the time too. Then one day a man named Freddie Sanderson was transferred from his ward to our ward. I think with all the fighting going on, they brought Freddie to quiet things down, to make sure that everybody got along. It was great to have another Native person in the room. We hang out together a lot. He was my mentor who I look up to. He taught me about his Native culture, and he told me lots of Native stories of his people. Then in 1 year, living in the ward, Freddie told me that he was leaving and going to a foster farm. Then he was gone out of my life. As I'm older now, I look back to those days, and now I know that Freddie was my friend.
It was a sad day when Freddie Sanderson died.
Freddie flies like an eagle in the sky. Goodbye, Freddie. One day we will fly together.
His death led to an inquiry.
The bird flaps its wings. A single shifting of air can alter the winds.
In 1971, the inquiry recommended that the institutions be closed, but it was another 38 years before that happened. Why?
The bird flaps its wings. A single shifting of air can alter the winds. We hear you. We believe you. We see you. We honor you.
We remember and honor all those of you buried on unmarked graves.
Ethel Van Bridger, Helen Bell, Charles Edward Love, Reuben Meadows, Henry Hartman, Mae Young, Pierre Doucette, Euphemia Stevenson, Pearl Scott, Florence Wise, Philip Farrington, Percy Grant Loveday, John Blue, Grace Sweet, Titus Teboul, Mamie Marcellus, John Kennedy, Ruby Weaver, Susan Love, Moses Genero, Charles Wise, Ernest Smith, Octave LeMay, Barbara Shingabis, Harry James Swallow, Marshall Berry, James Sleep, Martha Snow, Hannah Flowers, Arthur Wise, Herschel Stein, Pascal Cohen, Lucy Maud McGregor, Ruby Rockwood, Clarence Cecil Love, Louis Sabo, Mary Forrest. Da 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 ba da 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 da. Da 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 da.
David was one of the last people to leave Southwestern. He was expected to die several times, but he lived to be 74. He left the institution when he was 73.
David delighted in the ring on his finger and the ringing of a bell. When David was dying, his friends and family gathered around him, singing his favorite songs.
Johnny Cash!
Johnny Cash.
He didn't speak, but he spoke through his eyes and his body. He was a wise man. He could have been the grandfather of many of us. When David was happy, he liked to throw things. Woo!
I found 2 photos of my sister in her institutional file. The first one was taken just after she arrived at Rito, at the age of 20 months. A bewildered baby, not yet walking. The second one was taken after she'd been there for 10 years. I'm haunted by her defiance, by her absolute determination to survive. But I don't even know what she was resisting. It's so different from the photo I have of her that was taken after she left the institution. When she went to live in the community with a caregiver who truly loved her and became her second family. She looked so happy and confident in her pearls and beautiful flowered dress, so at ease with herself and the world, no longer under siege. They lived together for 29 years.
quiet without you, Helen. Helen Blue, affectionately known as Trouble.
You got your own apartment in a community with your beloved cats. You kept an eye on our house while we were away, and you always stopped to chat when you could.
You were the life of the party. It would not be long talking to you, and you would have us smiling.
I first met you when I was visiting my dad. You walked by with a cup of coffee. Helen, I said, where's my coffee? The next time I was visiting, I heard a voice behind me say, hey, where's my coffee? It became a joke between us. In fact, sometimes you would disappear and come back with a cup of coffee.
Even in the most serious of times, you always found the positive.
We never had to guess with you. You always told it straight up, the good and the bad.
I'll miss you, Ellen Blue.
We could hear you come down the hall, and we would smile and say, here comes trouble.
You were always causing trouble, flirting with all the men and making everyone laugh.
You took it from my life.
Really going to miss you. Leo escaped many times. Heronia was not his home. Leo had a dream to be a homeowner. It was spring. It was 76. He was waiting for his compensation. His sister Jenny did not want him to wait any longer. Jenny helped Leo to purchase a nice mobile home on the outskirts of Sault Ste. Marie. Leo is a homeowner, an artist, an uncle, and a good friend.
Gordon Ferguson published a book about his experiences in the institution and his life afterward. He chose a good group of friends and people to support him when he needed it. He lived in his own home with his wife. He became an advocate for people with disabilities, encouraging inclusion and should. I think Gordon was brave to write his stories. He encourages me to be positive and to let other people know what it's like to live with a disability. Gordon wrote in his book, I can be a source of hope for someone, and he is.
Da, 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 da,
It's Eileen.
And Carrie. This is Makes Me Think. Makes me think.
Today's topic is freedom.
Freedom. Oh, freedom. Where do we start?
Well, what makes you feel free?
Off the top of my head? I'm not waiting for the TTC. I could just hop on my own bicycle and move through the city. On my bike is one of the freest feelings I have, I think. How about you, Irene? What makes you feel free?
Well, what makes me feel free is I can swim in my own pool whenever I want. Really good exercise. I love it. It's refreshing. It's cool water. It's lovely, and I love it.
Oh, take me there. You know, I think too, I feel freedom, or what feels free, is...
Like what?
Like getting ice cream at 2 o'clock in the morning.
What kind of ice cream?
I would go for like a nice vanilla with a chocolate sauce or something.
Ooh.
Yeah.
In a cone or a cup?
A cup.
Oh. I guess freedom is about choices.
Having the right to choose and...
Yeah. Sometimes I can't be free. Sometimes I wish I could free all the animals in the world, but obviously I can't do that right now. So, if I'm free, I want all the animals to be free.
Oh gosh, I didn't see that coming. Free all the animals in the world?
Yeah.
Like from where?
From their cages, of course. At the Toronto Zoo.
Go free all the animals at the Toronto Zoo?
Of course, I would.
But aren't animals like technically considered safe if they're in cages?
They can be safe, but what life do they have in their cages? They should go to the natural habitat. I guess freedom is making your own choices, but there are consequences and limits to that. And having your ice cream with a friend at 2 in the morning?
My bicycle in Toronto. Freedom is you and your pool.
Yeah. That's my natural habitat.
It just comes down to like that freedom of choice and who makes the choice.
Yeah.
Going my own way and making my own choices and going my own way. Freedom is closing my door behind me. It's going my own way. Rachel, what does freedom mean to you?
Freedom is flying through above the sky. Freedom is dancing my favorite music.
We are not alone when it comes to freedom. We need each other, a friendly hand to hold on to as we live out our lives.
Beat strong and steady, our hearts and wings together. Beat strong and steady, our hearts and wings together. Beat strong and steady, our hearts and wings together. Beat strong and steady, our hearts and wings together. Beat strong and steady, our hearts and wings together. And then we will fly with the other birds. They make me think about freedom. They make me think about freedom, freedom, freedom. Oh, freedom, freedom.
So I couldn't hear my harmony at all.
I'm sorry, and I got distracted. I was like, who's with Robert? And then I realized that Andreas wasn't there.